What up, Ho Biscuits? It's your girl Skitten, back at it again, here with my husband. How's it going, husband?
Tell him what I did.
So,
Tell him what I did.
we're getting a little wild and crazy the night before New Year's, and we, specifically my husband, broke the bed.
Sure did. All by myself. No help from my wife.
Sounds like a joke, but we actually did. We actually did break the bed frame.
Yeah.
Not doing anything fun, literally sleeping. It had been creaking for a while, to be clear. We knew there was some sort of structural deficit.
No, my wife has this impending doom upon everything that she hears, thinking it's a structural deficit. I'm like, look, wood creaks.
No, it doesn't. I ain't never been in no creaky bed. I don't know what kind of creaky beds my husband's been in. But the point is, we knew there was some sort of structural deficit, and we knew it was coming, okay? Oh. We had it coming.
It was a surprise.
We had it coming.
After I broke the bed, she's slowly rolling towards me because it's like angled down. So she's like, well, kind of like hanging off the edge. She's Mufasa clawing on the other side of the bed. Just like slanted in.
And then I was like, are we gonna fix it now? And he was like, no, we're going to bed. I hope that you guys are doing better than we were.
Yeah.
Hope you guys are staying safe and sanitized. For the conclusion of that story, we spent the weekend fixing the bed, and it now works, and it doesn't creak anymore. So
solid job. Very
happy about that. Today, we are here to watch an extra credits, extra history video.
Beer.
We shot the last video in this series 4 months ago.
And these were consistent.
4 months ago. And I begged my husband. I said, hey, people were pretty into the beer video. We should watch the next one. He's like, yeah, we'll get to it. And then my husband found Maxor. You know where all his free time went? To freaking Maxor videos. And finally,
after you watch a Maxor video, you don't want to do anything else but sleep.
Finally, that's very true. I have dragged him back here for episode 2 of Extra Credits History of Beer. This one is called Barbarian Brew. I am super excited to see what this video has in store for us. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
Rome, 98 CE. Roman historian Tacitus takes a sip of wine as he pores over scrolls. He's compiling an ethnographic study of the German tribes, including their drinking customs. To pass an entire day and night in drinking disgraces no one, he says to the scribe he's dictating to. Their quarrels, as it might be expected with intoxicated people, are seldom fought with mere abuse, but commonly with wounds and bloodshed. Yet it is at their feasts that they consult on the reconciliation of enemies, matrimonial alliances, choosing chiefs, and even on peace and war. For they think at no time is the mind more open to simplicity of purpose, or more warmed to noble aspirations.
Smart.
After a digression, he describes their particular alcohol. A liquor for drinking is made out of barley or other grains, which once rotted has a certain resemblance to wine.
Rotted.
Revolting barbarians, he thinks, as he takes another sip of his fermented grapes.
First thing you had to tell me about part 2 is it had Rome in it. I'd have came rolling down the cobblestone, questioning life in a toga. And second of all, that quote is so popular, I've definitely heard that before.
Really?
Really.
That's interesting.
When you hear something you know it's really familiar, like, man, like where have I heard that before? Such like major vibes. I'm like energized.
Baby, I swear it's deja vu.
I feel like you just don't take me seriously when you break out in musical. I'm trying to like talk about how energized I am and like, come on. Really?
That's what you just described.
Play the thing.
Baby, I can't.
Okay.
Cause everything I see is you. And I don't want to substitute. Baby, I swear it's...
This is a form of abuse. It's really teaching me to not express myself and my feelings, or I'm going to get sung at.
Beer was the drink of the Fertile Crescent, of Egypt and North Africa.
Right.
Indeed, the beverage ruled the ancient world, until it was conquered by the same enemy that menaced all of Europe, the Romans. The Romans.
I was like, is it the Mongols? Genghis Khan? No? Okay.
Wrong time period.
Till it was conquered by the same enemy that menaced all of Europe, the Romans. The Romans were a wine culture, a drink they considered synonymous with civilization, made
True.
from a crop that did well in the Italian environment. From the palaces to the far provinces, to be an ancient Roman was to drink wine, and they exported it everywhere in their burgeoning empire. All other alcohols they labeled as foreign, perhaps the worst slur in Roman culture. The irony, of course, being that wine was imported to Rome from Greece, and they learned much of the cultivation from it from Carthage. Heck, even their sneering dismissal of other drinks was, like practically all their gods, inherited from the Greeks. But as the Roman Empire pushed north into Europe, it increasingly contacted other drinking traditions, ones based around what can broadly be called beer. Now, all of the information we have on drinking in Northern and Central Europe at this period comes from Roman sources and archaeological evidence, so there's a lot of gaps. But Roman writers do note that even at the time of the Gallic Wars, the people of Central and Northern Europe were barrel-making cultures who enjoyed a wide variety of drinks. These included ale mixed with honey, types of local wine, and mead, which is made from fermented honey rather than grain. But most importantly, they make it very clear that to the Romans, all types of ale were absolutely gross. Beer was generally made from barley, a grain they mostly fed to horses, i.e. literal animal feed. In Rome, barley is what you ate during famine, and they even punished military units by making them live on barley.
Wow.
So when they
Damn.
saw people creating a barley mash, letting it rot in a wooden barrel, and then drinking it, that was a joke. Though just FYI, this rotting was the same process of fermentation that produced their precious wine, so glass houses and all that. Some tribes, like the Gauls, who inhabited what is now France, took to Roman wine and even began cultivating it themselves, while others were more resistant. In his Gallic War, Caesar wrote that the toughest and wildest tribes were the Germans, and in particular the Belgians, who both refused Rome's drink. They do not at all allow wine to be imported among them, he wrote, since they believe that by it men are made soft and effeminate for the endurance of hardship. And Caesar agreed, believing that wine drinking had weakened the Gauls and assisted Rome's civilized conquest. Now, Caesar never mentioned beer at all, but later Roman authors expanded on this idea of beer making barbarians wild and strong, with the comforts of civilization, particularly wine, enfeebling them. At the same time, the rulers of the tribes who came under the Roman banner started drinking wine, making it associated with higher status. And do you detect a stereotype forming here?
It's so funny because that attitude around wine drinking has definitely continued in today's culture.
And it's funny because it seems like it's one of those things. It's like, if you're accepting our wine, you're accepting our diplomacy, which means you're going to be less aggressive. Like, it feeds into itself. But, like, it's actually more than that. Everybody just believes wine is more sophisticated, beer is more brutish.
Yeah. And also, it's funny because, like, you know, people who are into wine, they're very like, oh, you know, I can taste the oak barrel, blah, blah, blah.
Pick you up.
You know? And, like, people who are into beer, well, with the advent of craft beers.
I was about to say,
with the advent of craft beers, I feel like it's a little bit different. But even then, people who are into beers don't tend to be as snobbish about it.
There are people who will take sips of wine and break down each individual flavor to a T, right or wrong, doesn't really matter. And it's all about the show.
Yeah.
And even when people break down beer, more times than not, even when they're their snobbiest, are still drinking generally what they have in front of them.
Right.
Wine, the drink of the civilized and powerful, of educated city dwellers. One that tames wild men, but makes them effeminate and weak. And beer, a common man's brew that makes drinkers strong and wild, courageous and quarrel-prone, that imparts the raw toughness civilization lacks. And like it or not, those ideas are still with us today. It should be noted, however, that Roman troops did gradually start drinking beer, especially in the far-flung posts like Britain, when wine wasn't available.
Right.
And that's kind of how things stood, with wine as the dominant drink, until the Western Roman Empire fell, and the transport networks for wine crumbled. So what are people drinking after Rome's collapse, you ask? Well, in places like Normandy and Bordeaux that produced wine grapes, still wine. But outside those areas, mead was now the most important beverage of the elite, particularly in Germany, Scandinavia, and Britain. There, mead halls were an important part of culture.
I'm so excited because I was going to ask, I was going to talk about mead, but I was like, oh, well, mead's not really relevant to beer, so I won't bring it up. And now I'm like, yes, it is!
In Germany, Scandinavia, and Britain. There, mead halls were an important part of culture, a communal spot for socializing, swearing oaths, and conducting business. Now we could spend an entire episode on mead halls and their social political
We
functions.
should.
But right
Let's
now,
do it.
I want you to look at its architecture with
Okay.
its large open spaces, benches, and long tables.
Yeah, it
what
looks
does
like
that
a
look like to
like
you?
a pub.
Yep, it's a beer hall. The kind largely associated today with Germany, and if you're in my neck of the woods, Astoria. What up, Bohemian Hall? So, back on track. Though spurned by the powerful, ale had never gone fully out of fashion with average households. It was too useful and easy to make, and therefore the preferred everyday beverage. In Germany, it held on tenaciously, and in Ireland, which the Romans decided not to mess with, beer was never interrupted at all. Now, the idea that medieval people drank beer due to water being unsafe is mostly a myth. The Middle Ages not being ancient Sumer after all, and fresh supplies of clean water were abundant even in cities. But ale was considered more pleasurable, hearty, and hospitable. A young monk spoke for most Europeans when he observed that he drank, quote, ale if I can get it, and water if I have no ale, unquote. By the year 1000, ale was also starting to become commercial. Monks brewed it for the poor, or sold it to sustain the monastery. Ale was also considered a type of liquid bread, meaning it could be drunk for sustenance during fast days, when the monks were only supposed to consume bread and water.
That's
However,
so cool.
women still did the vast majority of brewing.
That's so cool. I did not know that. That's
Out
really
here
cool.
getting toasted.
Bro, just 24/7, bro. I'm hungry as hell. Give me that ale,
my
bro.
God.
Give me that liquid bread.
They brewed for the household and sold or exchanged whatever they had left over. Sometimes neighbors took turns in a goods exchange, with one neighbor brewing one week and the other the next. Inevitably, some women were better at it than others and began to open the front rooms of their homes as businesses. When the beer was ready, this alewife would put an ale wand, a sprig of branch, outside to signal that they were open for business.
Is that
Then
what that
neighbors would
is?
come to either fill their buckets to take back home or bring cups to consume beer
To
on the
go
premises.
beer. Love
These
it.
homes,
cool.
dubbed alehouses in England, were the first type of public house. And soon they were joined by taverns, which also sold wine and offered private rooms for the wealthy, and inns that offered food, overnight accommodation, stables, and often financially incentivized company in the rooms upstairs. The ale they served was porridge-like, full of spice and berry flavorings, and mostly the low-alcohol small beer. People drank 10 liters of it a day.
Damn.
He said porridge like, and my tummy was just like,
Oh, it was thick. Yeah, remember we went over that
I know,
before. Yeah.
I know. Stick a spoon in it.
Yeah.
Reign of Henry III in the 13th century, the trade was big enough to attract regulation. As part of a law called the Assize of Bread and Ale, the first food and drink quality legislation in Britain, local officials called ale tasters would tour establishments every 6 weeks,
I want
doing
that
the
job.
very
Nice.
hard, demanding work of ensuring the ale being sold was of sufficient quality, fairly
Nice.
priced, and had its strength labeled. Ooh, that sounds like a tough job, Zoe, but someone had to do it.
Right.
You know, preferably someone who gave their brother-in-law the mayor a nice fat purse right before their appointment. Delicious, delicious corruption.
I did not like the sound of that, but I like the joke, so I'll allow it.
I know some of y'all are into that ASMR shit, you know? Like, I know that's like a thing for y'all.
Yeah.
And TikTok stays recommending me like ASMR lives, and I keep hitting not interested, and it keeps not
Go,
working.
I don't care. Listen to them whisper at you.
But I feel like I cannot express just how gross that gulping sound made me feel. Like my hairs are standing on end. It was like, so like when we fixed the bed, okay? When we fixed the bed, my husband drilled a screw through the wood, and then he was like, "Oh man, it went all the way through. Now we have to file it." And then we had to listen to a metal file on a metal screw. That's what that gulp sounded like to me. I really hate hearing the sounds of people swallowing.
It would sound like you were more angry if you had any bass in your voice, but it's really just kind of cute. Just like describing this in like a soft voice. It's really soothing. It's not too loud. Kind of like ASMR, kind of.
That was disrespectful. That was rude.
What was that? Sorry, I couldn't hear you. I had to turn my headphones up and hear you all bassy in my ears.
Oh my God.
But on the continent, a new innovation would change beer forever.
Okay.
Because in Germany, people were adding hops to it
Hops.
in order to
Hops.
give it a more
Hoppy.
complex, bitter, smoky flavor, and also preserve it. This also, by some definitions, turned ale into true beer. Now, sometimes it's been said that the polymath abbess Hildegard von Bingen was the first to
Great
hop
name.
ale, creating what we now know as beer. And while it's possible she did some experiments with that, between running a convent, writing poetry and plays, receiving visions from God, practicing medicine, drafting works of philosophy and science, creating her own language, and being the most prolific musical composer of the Middle Ages, people had been experimenting with hops for centuries before her birth. So, maybe we can't chalk this one up to her. And hops changed everything. Taste-wise, sure, but also when it came to production. Hopped beer lasted weeks, meaning for the first time, beer could be made in large quantities and exported as commercial
You can
products.
start selling that
importantly,
shit.
All
Yup.
across the sea.
Yup.
So grab a
That's
barrel
so
and roll
cool.
with us next week as we form guilds, swig with Martin Luther, and ask the pressing
Martin
question:
Luther,
is getting
oh my
drunk
God.
a sin?
Dude, Martin Luther out there drinking beer, and you thought those ideas just came from visions of God. He was drunk when he did it.
So my question to you is, when am I getting you for part 3? Are you going to make me wait another, not even a quarter of a year, third of a year?
I'd have been here way early if you would have told me Rome was involved in the beginning. You're not doing a good job selling it to me is what the
Why do
problem
I have to? It's beer. It sells itself.
We barely just started drinking beer ourselves. And we don't even really enjoy it that much. It's kind of just like a cheap, easy to drink alternative.
I mostly just like micheladas.
Right. So,
Because they don't taste like beer. The taste of beer, bleh. Taste of micheladas, chef's kiss.
the history of beer is getting more interesting. Martin Luther was mentioned. Remind me of Luther so I can come up with some quotes for the next video.
Okay.
Because that guy is fascinating to me.
Well, thank you so much, husband, for joining me for this video. Thank you guys for joining us for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. Don't forget to leave your reaction requests and recommendations down in the comments below. Husband, you're looking very handsome over there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're looking good.
Next time, let's do it
After-
with beers.
Yeah!
Yeah.
You got your chain matching your glasses.
Yes, I do.
Are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Your hair's all fluffy.
Thank you.
Yeah, you look great.
All right.
You should kiss my face.
Okay. Listen, wife. Listen, I had a good time shooting this video with you. I will be back for part 3 in earlier than a month. We will see you guys very soon. Welcome to Slovakia.
Just keep talking. He didn't
See you
even
guys.
No, don't let him play you. He didn't even kiss me. Peace out, Ho Biscuits. It's Skittin' Lit.